Hi everyone. I'm Tom Sleigh from Colliers. We have Yotam, founder of Mindspace, and we're going to have a little chat through their story, really, from 2014 up to today. It's an incredible story. One of the few truly international operators who are operating across 8 different countries, 23 different cities. 160,000 square meters of space. For us at Colliers, from an occupier services point of view, really valued partner, done some incredible stuff for some of our big corporate clients. And I think the other big thing as well about Mindspace is that there are very few truly international. So I think we'll have a really interesting chat with Yotam about how it all happened and continues to grow. So.
Thanks, Tom. I think after that intro I should go, because it could just go downhill from here. So I've been working with Tom for a while. Tom is running the Flex EMEA team for Colliers, has 8 team members on his staff, and it's great to have you here. So, should we start?
Yeah, let's go. I think, so you've been going 10 years now. I haven't had the invite for the 10-year anniversary party.
You also didn't get the shoes.
Oh, no. I can't wear white. So how did it all begin? Tell us how it all began.
So in 2013, there were a few things happening. I visited my brother. He was at a WeWork in New York. WeWork at the time had like 6 locations and 2 at the West Coast. And I think like a week after, there was a publication by the National Bureau of Statistics at the US that 50% of the working force by 2020, looked very far at the time, would be freelancers and SMBs. And I came back to Israel and I thought to myself, where all these guys are going to sit? Nobody will give them a proper office and a proper address in a proper building. And I was working for a robotic company at the time, totally unrelated to Mindspace. And I called my friend from 2nd grade who just sold his solar company. It also doesn't have any connection to what we're doing today. And we started exploring this idea of having coworking. 2013, nobody had any clue what is it, and it was even before the hype of WeWork. Everybody in New York started to hear about them, but nobody else. Beyond that, there were 4 very basic coworking players in Tel Aviv at the time. And we found a building in the best location in Tel Aviv, but the bank and the owner asked us to sign personal guarantees. I don't know if it's something that happens in Europe. Does it? Yeah. Anyway, and I remember that my father, who was in real estate, always told me never signed personal guaranteed. So we signed, and for a very long time. And we opened 1,000 square meter. And it got filled within 5 weeks with a price that is double than the rest of the competitors, which was very crazy. We didn't have any comps to use or any parallel competitors that we could take inspiration on pricing or assumptions. And the brokers at the time, also didn't know what's coworking. In Israel, maybe in London they did. And after a few months, we took another floor, another personal guarantee, and that got filled up before we opened it, like 100%. And we started receiving corporate, which was not in the business plan at all. Suddenly Coca-Cola came, and Uber came, and Palantir came. It's like a huge cyber company from the Silicon Valley. And it made us brave, maybe too brave. And we took a whole building just behind the existing one. and we had to compete on that with Google and boutique hotels from all over the world because it's a very unique building and address. It used to be the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange building. And we were lucky enough that sometimes you need luck in those circumstances that the landlord of other floors in the building that we are at was that landlord. It's the largest institutional investor in Israel. And he kept hearing from his employees that there is a cool something in the floors that he doesn't have. Another personal guarantee for 25 years. And he gave us the chance, and then it was like suddenly at that time, a big operation, 6,000 square meter. Barclays took 2 floors, and suddenly it became something.
Yeah, it's you know that first deal is always we speak to a lot of operators, and sometimes it's by fluke or chance. I was talking to someone last night in Belgium who bought a building because he couldn't find somewhere to work, and has now got 12 locations in Belgium. So everyone begins in a different sort of way. But how did you go from being in Israel and Tel Aviv to go international? Because there aren't many who've gone to that scale of international expansion so quickly. So when did you first go abroad, and where was it?
So after the second building, we thought the market would be saturated if we open another one. It's funny thinking about it today, but this is how we felt then. We started mapping what would be good markets for us that we could also succeed, and there were 3 options, like a typical tech company, although we were not tech, of course, but a typical tech company from Israel usually go to the US. They think they know the mentality, they speak English. There are many other Israelis who did it there, so it looks like the right path. But we didn't want to do it because it meant that we had to split, and we had fun, so we didn't want to split the day-to-day. And the 2 other options were London or Berlin. Berlin won mainly because Germany, for us, seemed the more interesting markets because of the second-tier cities that have more impact on the economy rather than the second-tier cities in the UK. And also Berlin was on steroids, like many HQs moved from Munich to Berlin, and positive immigration and VC money, and like basically anybody you talk to about in Europe on doing business was talking about Berlin. We didn't have any money. We didn't raise any money by the time. And we were able to secure an agreement with a real estate company that gave us funding for that operation. I don't know why they agreed, but they did, and they gave us a lot of money to run the operation. And
sorry to interrupt you there, but did having the institutional investor in Tel Aviv help with that conversation in Germany? Did it give you more credibility?
It gave. Well, he wasn't our investor. He was like a landlord. It gave, but at the end of the day, you start from scratch, 0 credit score in Germany. If we don't succeed, that real estate partner from Germany gets nothing. And he signed on the second most expensive lease in Berlin at that time. And he said, I never signed on leases like that. Like, it's so expensive. It is on Friedrichstrasse, to the ones of you who know. And I said, look, that's the only place we feel comfortable making money. There were 70 other competitors in Berlin at the time, but none of them were in prime location. So the more mature companies would probably not sit there. And this is a place that we could bring like capital markets funds, VC funds, lawyers, on top of the usual suspect that we all have. And he agreed. It was a 5,000 square meter. We opened at 52% occupancy, prices above the business plan. In Germany, what's interesting in Germany that beyond being a very large market, it was also a very suspicious market towards co-working. So most meetings I tried to hold with landlords, they didn't even want to take the meeting. They heard it's co-working and said, I'll rather list it to Google or to some delivery hero or somebody else. But once you pass through the confident test, and it took a while, then you start getting the front row seats for deals. And what happened that I went to Hamburg to visit the city for the first time. I even took like the tourist bus. God help me. And I saw this amazing building, and I called my partner. I told him, look, I found a building. I know usually it takes like 6 months. It took us 6 months to close a deal in Berlin, and by accident, we signed a deal in Hamburg in 6 weeks. Wow. Like, amazing deal, amazing building. But we didn't plan it to happen so quickly, and then we had to open our both international sites in the same month.
But then, what you were saying earlier, you were looking at London or Germany. So you chose Germany because you saw more potential for multiple cities. So having that sort of quantum, or the ability to grow and take the second, third, fourth, fifth side, how important has that been in your decision making for new markets? Because you're now in 8 countries? 7, sorry.
7. So at the time, we didn't have investors backing the company, so there wasn't the pressure to grow. But the real estate company whom we did the JV with, they did have expectation of us to be. It was a few billions dollar company, and they didn't want to sign this agreement for 2 locations. It's not moving the needle. So we had to make it work and to grow. But it was always, to us, it felt that it was always like a sensible growth. Although it happened rather quickly, objectively, it was always prime location in Munich, Viktualienmarkt, to the ones of you who know, and it was always, I made up this rule because it was too cold for me to walk when it's snowing in Germany, that you shouldn't walk more than 3 minutes to the train station. And I think out of the 13 locations we have in Germany, 10 are like on the tram station, 50 meters. So,
because one of the things when I think of Mindspace, I think of the design. You guys spend a lot of, you put a lot of effort into each building. They're all different. It's not prescriptive. It's not like going to a Hilton. Everyone's the same. So you got really excited talking about that first building in Hamburg. What was that, because of the architecture of the building or the micro location? How did?
Everything. First, the address was very, very known for the Hamburg community. The building itself from the outside looked like a museum, high ceilings, listed stairwell like core, and the design that we were able to do there was really, really crazy. We won awards for it, and I think design for Mindspace is like a core thing that we.
Should we get some of the images up? I think it might be good if people have not seen some of these.
So very briefly, this is our second location in Berlin, 5,000 square meter. It was empty in the happy days of Berlin. It was empty for 5 years, and we decided to take a chance and take it. So it made the deal very lucrative, and we opened that at 72% occupancy, and it went to 95 and stayed there like for many, many years. This is our first location in Warsaw, over a food market. We grew from 4,000 to 6,000 along the years on that specific location. Anyways, some other images.
So
but
there's a lot that goes into this decision making, right? So you look at the market, you look at the demographics, the architecture obviously important, what you can design.
No, sorry, what I was about to say about design that um, for us it's a very important element, the design, but it's after a few years we realized that it's not the main topic. Yeah, so although we invest the same amount of effort and dedication for it, at the end it all boils down to a very fluffy word, but it's called experience, and this is like the main thing you can win your day-to-day on.
So would you say that's sort of one of your sort of USPs, like how you differentiate yourself in market? It's not just the really cool building or the design you put in or where it is, the service. Do you feel it's the sort of, the sum of the parts is greater, and that's what sort of has meant that you've been able to grow, and you guys can all see it. I mean, it's quite phenomenal, and also profitable, which we'll come on to in a minute. Growth, which is sort of sounds counterintuitive when you talk about flex growth. But how do you, the DNA of Mindspace, how have you managed to sort of replicate that, or not replicate it, or evolve that across different markets, different cities? We were talking earlier about the US, and we're not going to talk too much about the US, but they're in San Francisco, New York, Philly, Miami, basically 4 different countries. Amsterdam's incredibly different to Hamburg, and so how have you managed to keep that sort of DNA going, and that success?
It's a good question. I think that 2 things helped us polish the machine, so to speak. So the first one is actually WeWork. So I owe a lot to WeWork. Having someone that keeps you on your toes in every market made us really what we are, and we had to be better in everything because their tactic was to reduce prices, and it wasn't our tactic, and we had to win customers while not reducing prices. So our design had to be a bit better, and the staff had to be a bit larger and better and nicer. So bunch of little things that made us win in the local market. So I'll give you an example. In Berlin, for years until 2019, we were full. We had at the time 3 locations. They had 10 or 12. We were constantly full. No discounts. They were constantly full, 50% off, constantly. If you think about that, if they stopped handing discounts, they were full without discounts because the market was big enough in order to swallow all of this demand. But it was part of their tactic, and it was simply not working. And I think for us, it made us really, really make an effort to have the best team, to have like a sort of killers on the ground on every deal and on every customer complaint and on every design element, because we knew day 2 what will happen. On day 2, we will have someone, a very good operator, that will offer 50% off, and other competitors as well, yeah? But I think that's one. The second thing is that because we went relatively early on to more and more countries, every time you start from scratch. Credit score is 0, the local community doesn't know you, the landlords don't know you, the suppliers don't know you, you don't have a brand. So every time you need to like reboot the entire process, and that makes you very good in execution. And the team learns from day 1 that they came into a company that the mindset is like a startup, even though we were already, whatever, 120 employees or 150. But the mentality was like, we were born yesterday, and if we don't do it that way, we will die tomorrow, which is like the mindset of most young companies, I hope.
Interesting. So you just spoke about people there. You've got, I think you said, over 200 staff in all these different countries. How do you manage that? How do you keep on top of and so many nationalities, languages?
Yeah, so unlike many companies where they go abroad, they usually bring a GM, and the GM builds a company in his vision. He gets guidance, he could get fired, he could get whatever, but he builds it in his vision. We always do it from the ground up. So we bring the local team that needed for the first location. There are no senior people on the ground. If it's one building, there will be 3, 4 people. One of them will manage the building. That's it. We'll take a second building. Hopefully, one of these individuals will be good enough. He will get promoted. If not, we'll bring someone externally. After a few more locations, it's a city lead, and then if we grow enough, it will become a GM. What it creates people that know their shit, sorry, and all of them, got the best class in starting from the ground up and didn't land into something. I think that for many companies, mainly operational companies, it's super important that everybody will go through the entire journey. So that's still the strategy today.
Yeah. And what's the loyalty like of your teams? As we were waiting, I don't know who he was, but someone came up to you. He used to work with you in Germany. Yeah. And he obviously, I'm not just saying this because we're sat next here now, but he obviously really liked you. So creating that sort of that loyalty, that commitment in such a dispersed network. Do you travel all the time? Are you like on the road every week, just seeing and checking in? What are your air miles like? Are they?
So up to COVID, I was on the plane like every week, every other week probably since 2019. You need to invest a lot in people because it's a very, as you said, diverse. Last time I counted, there were out of the 220, over 40 different nationalities, 70% women, by the way. And it's something that you have to invest a lot. I cannot, as much as I trust our GMs, it's not something that we could completely outsource, and you have to maintain this relationship with HQ and with the management to keep that DNA flowing. And that's not so trivial when it's different countries, different mindset, different. Like it took us a while to understand why. I'm putting the name of the country aside for a second, but we started getting notice on burnout. I didn't even know what's burnout. Like one after the other. And it took us a while to understand what was the problem and why there is even such a thing like burnout that you need to speak with the lawyer, with the insurance, or with the doctor. Anyway, so after a while you realize how you need to conduct as HQ in each of the different markets. So you need on the one hand to be consistent, on the other hand you need to do these certain adjustments and to give a lot of trust and reins to the GMs because they know their stuff better than what you know. You can never be an expert on 7 countries, not to mention more. Even in Germany, the Munich teams is different than the Berlin team. I mean, the mentality of what's going on in the city is different, and you need to understand that Berlin is accidentally it's in Germany, but it's very far from being a German city. So,
and so has that translated into some of, well, profitability being the key one, we'll talk about that. But in terms of other metrics like retention of clients, companies perhaps in multiple countries with you, do you track sort of metrics like that?
I forgot to answer your loyalty question, so it just came to my mind that our second employee still works at Mindspace. She started as a community manager, and until recently she was the GM of Israel, managing 40, 50 people, tens of millions in revenues, and now she's promoted to management. And also the third employee in Germany is still with us, for example, like 9 years. So there are quite a few of people that has a very long tenure at the company. In terms of metrics, so got changed throughout the years. Obviously, the beginning, we were all over the place, and we always appreciate profits, of course, but it was never, I must say, it was never a KPI in the early years. Occupancy was, revenue was, um, and I think during the time of the crazy hype about WeWork, I'm assuming it confused everybody, right? So the valuations and how grow you can go, et cetera, et cetera. We were never, we, I think I'm very happy about it that we never got too crazy about it. So we never did like crazy stuff because of it, but of course it was somewhere in your mindset. Um, and in 2016 we started raising funds from investors, and then you get also the pressure from investors that you need to grow. 2018 was a year that we made a huge expansion. We opened in the same year 4 new countries and 18 new locations. 2018, yeah, give or take. So 18 new locations, 4 new countries. That was a crazy ride that I wouldn't recommend anyone. And during that year, we were already started being more cautious about profits. And the main reason was that we spoke to many investors, and they were like started scratching themselves about the WeWork situation. And we came to a conclusion that no matter what, we have to be profitable at all costs ASAP before something will happen. And we did 2 things. First one is we started a propaganda to do management agreement and landlord partnership with landlord, which took a lot of education, still does. And the second one is making sure that the entire KPIs of the company is just EBITDA. So I don't want to hear about occupancy as the main thing. I don't want to hear about cost reduction. All of you are being measured on EBITDA, and deduct from it whatever you want. And it sounds very simplistic, but you would be surprised how many people in different companies are not working in that way. And again, specifically in operational business, but not just, it changed the company. It's like crazy how much of an impact it had. 2019, everything was profitable. All the locations, maybe besides one, and the HQ was profitable and high margins, and thanks God we did that because it made us be as ready as possible to COVID, and we were able to end 2020 with profits. If we hadn't done that decision, I'm pretty sure that COVID would be like a death blow.
So that laser focus on profitability alongside that diversification of markets helped you go through COVID.
Yeah, definitely. And also took like 5 years of our life, probably. Yeah, you can imagine that dealing in one city with all the regulations and changes and laws, multiply it by, I don't know how many we had at the time, but more than 20. And employees and suppliers that are coming with lawyers and landlords that are coming with lawyers, and it was really, really, really super crazy. We did basically 2 things. We gave a lot of reins to the local teams, and we made a lot of quick decisions. There wasn't any time to overthink stuff. And most decisions were probably right. Some of them were wrong. But the year ended, in a very strong way compared to what could have been the situation.
And you were still looking at expanding during that time because you opened in 2021.
Yeah, we raised
another.
We raised
3.
another. So we raised till to date $150 million. At the end of 21, we raised more than $70 million from institutional investors. And then we started another effort of expansion, and we grew our portfolio by 50% almost.
Yeah, it's really impressive. So you touched on their structure. You skimmed over it quite quickly, but you don't just take classic leases. You were one of the original partnerships, form lots of different structures. We've seen all sorts across our desks, that's for sure. So I know you've done management agreements. I know you've done profit share leases. That was a conscious decision you went into in 2018 for profitability. A lot of other people are now, it feels like the direction of travel for expansion for a lot of operators is that way. I mean, what have you learned about that? As surely patience has been needed to find those and get those over the line.
Yeah. Those are very difficult deals, I must say. Most landlords don't know what you're talking about, or at least saying that, and don't want to hear about it. The banks don't give them loans, a lot of blah, 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 blah. You need to focus and finding the one that are ready to do it. It's
the ones that we bring to you.
Exactly. Yeah. Only Colliers could bring those.
Only Colliers, no.
And here there is a bit of a tricky part. There is a recession outside. On the one hand, on the other hand, you see like record-breaking prices on many, many things, and cost of living went up and inflation. So if you go to like the top buildings in London, right, record high or close to that?
Yeah, well into three figures.
Yeah, crazy. And nobody will give you a management agreement on those buildings, right? And what happens is that if you don't come with a track record, the only one that will give you a management agreement will be shitty buildings. So it's no risk, that's true, but do you want your team to work day in, day out and come up with like a mediocre performance, and then it will impact your ability to secure another one? It's tricky. You need to be very patient, and maybe the full management agreement you need to save to a certain instances, and the rest of the focus should be on what they call hybrid lease. I'm sure you guys are familiar with it. It's like a reduced rent kind of a structure with a profit share on top or different waterfall. I think this has more legs to most operators.
And especially on the continent as well. There aren't many pure management agreements on the mainland that we're aware of. I think we know of 3 pure management agreements. I'm sure there's others, but in terms of sort of institutions, UK, there's a lot more of an educated market. Johnny's helped with that one. But I agree with you. I think we're seeing definitely a direction of travel towards, partnership in a truer sense, where both parties are taking on some risk, and it does accelerate the expansion, which is, I think, you've taken on lease liability, you've taken on, capital risk, you've invested in these locations. It hasn't been risk-free from your perspective. So compared to some of your peers, maybe coming out of America, who had pure play management agreement or started like that, and have had very limited growth in Europe, I think that, I guess what I'm trying to get at is that local knowledge of, the German property market, the Polish market, the UK market, has enabled you to create something that's accretive for everyone and enabled you to grow sustainably.
Yeah, true. I remember something I wanted to tell you about expansion. So I'm not. How many of you run co-working businesses? Most. Okay. So how many of you have more than 3 locations? More than 1 country? Okay. How many of you saw the movie The Founder? McDonald? All of you should drop everything you do and go see the movie. It's a must. And the critical part of that movie is what happens when you start growing, / start giving franchise, / and losing touch with your business. And it's exactly what happens when you grow. And if you're not aware if you're not aware to the fact that it's going to happen, it will simply hit you harder. You need to be ready that it's coming, because at the beginning you have to be on top of everything. It's clear, and until a certain point you can't allow yourself financially, operationally, to bring management, because there's no justification to pay them, because you could do the job. The second you start growing beyond, I don't know, another country, 5, 6 location, I think there's a tipping point, different tipping point for every operator. You have to understand that you need to leave the keys with someone, not entirely, but to give him some access to the keys of the car, so you could focus on the next chapter. So when we did that, it was in Germany. We left a bunch of kids guarding our 6,000 square meter with 100% occupancy. Price per desk was $500. Like, amazing business. I mean, I'm still today wondering what would happen if we didn't do any growth and just leave those kids, go to the beach, and probably I'll live longer. But hadn't I gave them the keys and like released in my mind like at least 50%, Germany would not have happened, for sure. And you need to be ready to the fact that that piece is coming. You start losing touch with customers. At the beginning, I remember that every month we used to have like a parliament with 20 representatives of the community to ask them what do they like, why they don't like, blah, 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 blah. It was very important, I must say. After a year, we stopped it because of they were so fucking crazy that, and you know, we feel it today. We feel it today that customer was not as centric as it should have been, which happens to every company, this process. And even Elon Musk, the new Ministry of, I don't know if he has a title. I heard that he has always like an empty seat in his management for the customer, for the voice of the customer. It sounds funny, but it's super, super important. That's the only thing that you should always, meet customers, even if you don't have the time. And
yeah, I mean, because ultimately you're in the service hospitality game. Yeah, it all comes back to the occupiers. So I think that what you were describing there, that sort of going from hands-on founder, and then actually, as you say, letting go. That's real leadership, really, and something I guess you've had to learn as you've gone quickly. Have you ever taken sort of had coaching on leadership, or have you just found your own way? How have you had a mentor?
I had a mentor back home. So my father is for me still is a big mentor on leadership and business. He founded a real estate company in Eastern Europe. Started in Poland in '94 and ended up taking it public, and it became the largest developer in the CE region at the time. So I take a lot of my inspiration from him, and I think what's maybe unique at Mindspace is that, and I know it sounds fluffy and everything, but everything is very flat. So let's put it this way. Things have changed a little bit about after COVID, because you couldn't travel, and many of the employees were leaving, replaced, furlough, etc. But up until COVID, I knew all the employees, not just the name. Like, I knew them, and probably had the phone number of 80-90% of them. So I think we learned a lot from the people that we are. It's very quickly it stopped being me and my partner doing ABC. It became the team, and I can tell you that in Munich, the first deal, which I signed, I toured the market, I did the market research, la 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 la. And that's it. I came to the opening party. We were not involved in anything, not in the construction, not in the sales, not in the marketing. We didn't do anything. We were already focused on whatever it was.
Yeah.
And we came to the opening event. We opened at 82% occupancy.
Brilliant.
So
It's an incredible story. We've got about 10 minutes left, so we can keep going, or if you guys want to ask questions. There's one over here, I think.
So you talk, I know EBITDA is important apparently, but you talk about a lot of high percentages while opening in occupancy. What is the marketing strategy? How do you guarantee this high occupancy as of day one? As of when do you start? Or what are the different steps?
So maybe it's not fair that I quoted these numbers because they were pre-COVID. Post-COVID, it's not the numbers anymore. Everything takes much longer today. I think it's super important to make sure that your assumptions in the business plan are correct. And it sounds very trivial, and I guarantee you that many businesses, not specifically just operators, are doing it wrong. And every mistake on one line, the business plan, the performance will be different. And I think today the market is so mature and there's so much information out there that practically you shouldn't have any mistakes on the business plan. I think we need to come up with a lot of inventions how to make it work at the time, but today you could practically get it on a plate, right? So the amount of information Tom and his team can give you, the amount of information you could get from probably, I don't know, in which market do you operate?
Belgium and Luxembourg.
In Belgium. So I'm assuming that in Brussels or
Different cities in
Different
Brussels.
cities.
Well, we have 7 in Brussels, 5
okay,
outside.
so I'm assuming just walking into Brussels, I've been once, amazing chocolate. But I'm assuming that if you do a bit of legwork, after 2 days you understand what are the real prices that the competitors are selling, and after a few meetings and coach from a broker, project, you know exactly what are the numbers that you should do. So assuming that everything is like bulletproof on the assumptions, we always start 3-4 months before the marketing effort. And because now we are a bit bigger, so with some of the corporate customers, we have conversations on what their plans, and if they want to go to Brussels, we already signals them that it's coming. Not sure, we didn't sign it yet, blah, 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 but know that it's coming. Once I'm signing it, they get an email right away. Let's start working on it. So in some of the deals, we had like one member that came in and took half a floor or 30% of the floor. So, but I think you shouldn't be under the assumption that those should be your opening numbers. I think post-COVID it changed. So everything is, as I said, is slower.
Sorry, just on opening assumptions, I can't not tell this story. So many years ago, 10 years ago, before I got married, I was approached by a big American co-working company, and they came to London, and it was all quite cool. And so we're chatting, shooting the breeze a bit, and I said to them, okay, so like, what are you assuming? What's your day one occupancy? And he goes, 100%. I said, oh, wow, do you, like, what ramp? How long to get to 100%? He said, no, day one, 100%. So you'll know who it is, but I just remember thinking, you are insane. And there are some really, we're lucky, we see a lot of business plans and modeling from different operators, and it's, you'll be amazed at how crazy people can get on some of their assumptions, you know, spreadsheet millionaire type sort of stuff. So yeah, prudency I think is important, and proper research, of course.
And also maybe about research, no matter what you hear from brokers, nothing replaces legwork. So you need to go personally, do the tours, everything on your own to make sure that the prices that you see on the website, it's most likely won't be the price that you're getting, the real price, right? So most of the time when brokers are telling you what are the prices of the competition, unless they have an insight, they will tell you what's on the, online. That's the price. I mean, I can't expect somebody else to do a tour for me and get an actual deal, etc. And if by accident he did a recent deal with those guys, he knows the price. This is just one example, but the team needs to make sure that that's the way you do things. Otherwise, everything is like hovering above, and it will simply bite you. So, eventually.
Any more questions?
Hey, I have a quick question. So you mentioned that there was a lot of change during the pandemic in your personnel, and knowing that you have so many locations in so many different countries and continents even, how did you manage to keep the company culture alive with all these different changes in the different locations around the world?
How was I able to keep the what?
The company culture.
The culture, okay.
Yes, to maintain the way that you're going the same and to keep the same vision.
I think that you can't be good in many disciplines, but I think that one thing that we are really good at is recruiting people. And I think it's very, it strikes you very early on if you got the right person or not, and whether the dynamic that was created at that team is working or not. And I'm not saying we did it perfectly. We made a lot of mistakes along that way. We never, this rule that hire slow and fire fast. I'm assuming that most of us don't do it, right? Because it's difficult and you feel bad, and I like him. But I would highly recommend that if you have someone that is off, gently let him go quickly. And in the recruiting process, make a proper recruiting process, even if it might be a bit tiresome for some of the candidates. And I remember times where, for some of the markets, they were very surprised by, we had like 5 interviews and 1 case study, and it looked like, you're not fucking Google. Why do we have this entire process? It's just, whatever, community management. And we stick to that. And I think a lot of things are coming up from that story. Everybody could write a CV. Most people will get good recommendations from their previous jobs, because nobody really likes to screw someone on his career. So I'm giving those 2 things a very low score on the actual chances of success in recruiting. The interview is super important. And by creating the culture later on, it's a lot relies on the team and the leader of that team. The leader could be from HQ, the leader could be the local person. You should have a lot of faith in him and make sure he's the right person for that. And if not, moving. I could tell you like a really quick story. Quick story. We opened the first location in Berlin. I recruited a team leader, local guy. Looked amazing, amazing CV, very cool guy, more experience, blah, 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 blah. I think maybe someone in the crowd even remembers that story. We won't reveal who. Daniel, right? Maybe you remember that story. Anyway, I think a month in, we went out, all the team, for a dinner, and he said like the wrong comment to one of my team. And like I couldn't let it go. So day after, we said goodbye, and I brought another team leader. Great CV, she managed whatever, 20 people, etc. And it wasn't the right person. Like they didn't look up to her. She didn't perform. I said, how the hell am I going to release another manager in 1 month? It looks weird. So I didn't let her go. I put her on other important stuff to do, and I took the lead on managing them. But you need to be very minded that something like that could damage your opening numbers, disassemble the team. I mean, it's very fragile. Um, so it's a very confusing times now because you could get very lucrative deals from landlord because most of the real estate market is in deep shit at the moment. So you could get huge TIs and rent-free, but the question how much of those opportunities are real opportunities in day two, right? So you can get the deal back home and it's amazing. You didn't bring any money and it looks very good on the leasing side, but if it's not a good opportunity on day two, you won't make your numbers. So we are very selective on opportunities that we're seeing. It's definitely a time that all of us should be very focused on being profitable or staying profitable or increasing profitability. Then it keeps on growing, but selectively, not in a rush. Not in a rush for that. How much time do you have?
Just one.
Just one. Wow, it's a good question. I would probably either not going to the US or moving myself to the US. So you either go, it's such a big country that either you go all in, which we hadn't, or just focus on Europe. I think we were dancing on everything because we thought that investors would have to see like pins on the US map, which is probably true. And it's not that I'm not happy with the operation that we have there, I am, but strategically, probably it would have been either going all in just on Europe or separating myself or my partner, and there you go. I'm getting signs that I'm about to get murdered, so no, we became profitable in 2018, in 2019. You sell them a story. So most companies are not raising funds when they are profitable, right? And depends also the type of money that you're raising. We raised sort of equity story, right? You put money, we grow, it makes money. It's not dangerous as a startup, but it's not as boring as proper real estate. And you know, a solid management team, and the market is booming, 30%, all the quotation that we all hear about. It's a different type of pockets, right? So we didn't raise a VC money, but it's still the more brave type of guys on the team. They're not the ones that are looking for assets. We don't have assets, right? You go to different pockets of investors, they need to have an asset. So if something happens to you, they take the asset or whatever. So.
All right, that's it. Lunchtime, I think.